The Play Absolutely podcast with Dr. Sue Jennings and Dr. Andy Hickson. Welcome to another edition of the Play Absolutely podcast. Hello, Sue. How are you doing today?
Hi, Andy. Feeling playful now. It's a bit cooler. It means one can move around a bit more and so on.
Okay. So, playful, what have you been playing with then? What has the weather, the atmosphere allowed you or assisted you to play?
Well, it allows me not to have to put keeping cool at top of the agenda, which during the very high temperatures I was almost suffocating with heat. Quite interesting how different it is.
Then? Have you got any playful trick? Have you learnt or do you have any playful tricks or techniques to stay cool?
Well, primarily to use less energy moving. So still move, but maybe at a third the pace that one would normally move.
So you're going to pretend you're a sloth, are you? Pretend you're a sloth.
But no, I mean, personally, I found that extreme heat unbearable. And it affected my brain. My brain stopped being very creative and started being repetitive, which was quite disillusioning because one suddenly thought, is that it? Is my brain gone? Will it come back? And then everybody in the news is talking about brain fog. And of course,
so
fog
did your brain come back?
Well, fog is an extraordinary metaphor because you can't play in fog. I mean, fog just descends totally.
Oh, but the fun
You're trying
playing
to find
in fog
your way
when
through
you can't quite see it. There's a fabulous place that I revisit in Malaysia many times. It's called Bukit Larut, if anybody's visiting there. It's an old British hill station. And it's really, really high up. And the British, when they were there, they cut their way through the jungle up this hill right up to the top. And now they've got sort of little hotels, and it's fabulous for butterflies and other wildlife. And it's still surrounded by thick jungle. And now what you can do is, I think it's an 8 or 9 kilometre walk up this hill, quite steep in the. And by the time you reach the 4 or 5 kilometre mark, you go into the clouds. So you're then walking through the clouds. So it's kind of misty. You can't. It's not like you imagine it to be like walking into cotton wool or something. But yeah, so you're walking up. You're going through this mist. And the amount of animals that you see, monkeys, huge snakes and everything, it goes a little bit scary as you're walking up. You think, is a tiger going to suddenly jump out at me? Lots of poisonous snakes. But
that sounds amazing.
many times. It is a fabulous place. You can stay at the top. I've never camped up there, but I think all my kids at some stage of their lives, I've taken them there, and we've walked up that sort of 9 kilometre hike. The last time I went actually was great fun. Halfway up, there was a Chinese tour. They were doing it was all old people, and they were doing a Chinese tour, very, very slow, and they'd sort of stopped halfway up, and it was like a Chinese tea ceremony, and they invited us to join them. We're all eating tea and these little Chinese delicacies, and it was lovely. And then we carried on our walk up to the top. Very tiring, but it's a place that I recommend for anybody. So in the clouds, you were talking about when the fog comes over. I mean, I think the fog can be a joyful place. It's full of mystery. Maybe you don't want to drive in the fog. Maybe after you've read that horror novel by James Herbert called The Fog, you might be a bit scared of it. Yes, hold on, hold your thought. I knew it was somewhere. I read, or did I hear it on the radio last week? There were some studies that was suggesting that fog might be alive. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, it might have a consciousness of its own. I'll find out more about that. Yeah.
Yeah, 'cause
Anyway,
you-
what were you going to say?
I was just going to say that I think there's a qualitatively different between the sort of grey fog that descends on you
Right.
and the cloud that you can walk towards.
Yes.
People say, she's got her head in the clouds as if
Yeah.
you're in
yeah.
another world, but they don't say it in a negative sense. They just say it in a sense you're not concentrating on what the teacher's trying to tell you.
Yes, I don't disagree with that. I think the metaphors of fog are based in reality, but it is kind of, it's like you were suggesting, the fog descending. When you look at fog from a distance, it does look like the clouds, does look fluffy, it does look like cotton wool and so on. But when you get in close, you can't see that anymore. It's just water vapor. And I think when the fog descends on you, on your mind, for whatever reason, and we've all felt that for a variety of reasons, I think it's the fog that is the feeling you get with the fog in your brain is that distance fog. So it's all cloudy and fluffy and head full of cotton wool that's making it difficult then for you to make the correct decisions, to think this, that and the other, because it's all foggy. It's obscured, so to speak. Yeah. So it's not like the close-up fog, it's like that fog from a distance, which
And in a sense it feels heavy,
yeah.
whereas the clouds feel weightless
Light and fluffy.
because they're floating. I mean, if you think when we do drama exercises with young children,
Right.
one idea is floating like a cloud, isn't it? And then stamping like an elephant to be grounded and so on. But this idea of floating across the earth is a qualitative type of movement that we invite children to participate in. I mean, older children would dismiss it as silly, but small children would manage that.
Okay, good. Well, on that thought, let's look at this week's Play in the News.
Yes.
Yeah. So, in the UK, London schools are locking their gates and limiting children's active play. The London Assembly reported that many school spaces remain unavailable to communities after hours, i.e. after schools have closed. It says that 40% of London school sport halls, 32% of playing fields and 22% of swimming pools on school sites are closed. Only 42% of London schools make their sports facilities available outside of school time. It also reports that 53% of children and young people in London are not meeting recommended daily activity levels. Now, this, in my mind, is a classic space exists, access does not. Space exists, access denied story. And play and movement are not only about, as you and I know, building facilities, they are about unlocking them. I say that a locked playground is still a missing playground. Okay, next we go to Yemen, where war continues and the remnants of war are turning places of play into danger zones.
Really?
UNICEF Yemen reports that 5 children were killed and at least 7 injured this week by explosive bombs in Aid Halli's governorate. UNICEF warned that explosive remnants of war continue to threaten children in the places where they live, learn and play. And they called for clearance, mine risk education and support for survivors. This is the darkest form of play deprivation. The child's environment becomes unplayable because ordinary spaces are contaminated by conflict. A child cannot freely play in a landscape that has been taught to explode. That's this week. Play in the news. So two very different stories there.
Just talking about the Yemen experience, are these explosions from previous wars where they've got unexploded bombs? Is this what
Yes,
it is?
so I mean, it's all part and parcel of the the current, one would call it, conflict between the US, Israel, and Iran. There's also Lebanon's been involved. There's also the Yemen being involved at various points within this war. So yes, it's unexploded bombs and so on that they're still there, and they haven't been cleared.
I mean, they're still discovering buried weapons in the UK from the Second World War.
Well, yeah, they have,
which is
that's
quite
true.
scary. Usually on
Yes.
new building sites, yes.
I mean, some parts. I mean, if you go to other places like one of America's other biggest wars in Vietnam, and other parts of sort of the northern part of Southeast Asia, where you've got Cambodia and countries like that, there are still huge swathes of land that are full of mines. So the Americans mined it, and you can't go off certain tracks. I found out about this when I was planning an overland trip across Southeast Asia, and how in some of the countries there, like Cambodia, you've got to stay to the designated path because there's unexploded mines that haven't been cleared on either side of the track.
Yes, because Princess Diana, she was involved in a charity that specifically was to do with tracking down unexploded bombs and dealing with them. She actually went out on expeditions to demonstrate this needs to be done. I mean, it was incredibly brave when you think about it. She didn't stay in England and talk about it. She actually went to the countries involved.
Yeah.
Yes,
Right.
I was just thinking the metaphor of the unexploded bomb is something that's also very real. I've been thinking a lot about how there's an absence of play in domestic violence. And people talk about domestic violence as a bomb waiting to go off.
Yeah.
How they have to tiptoe around. One of my younger clients talked about it being like walking on eggshells. And when, as an 8-year-old, he was responsible for his younger brother to tiptoe round the explosions at home between his parents, which were very one-sided and very, very violent.
Yes. I mean, play, either an absence of play, or you can take I think I regard this as one of the more extreme forms of play. This idea, or this game activity that has a Russian name called Russian roulette, where people literally take a gun, put a bullet in it, and then fire it at their heads to see if that's the chamber with the bullet in. I mean, that is a game, that is play, taken to its extreme, and if you lose that game, you're dead. Scary business. I wonder how that one actually developed. And it's called Russian roulette. Did it develop in Russia? Something interesting to research, maybe. But I mean, how the play and the sort of the materials, ideas of play get sort of taken out of a playful environment and get used in things like war. You hear of war games, the theatre of war. We heard, was it Donald Trump recently, when he was talking about this MOU signed with Iran? Oh, we're just playing with them. So it seems that this war is in some people's minds one big game.
More than anything that I think happened in the past. I think currently this idea that war is a game, and okay, it might have tragic consequences, but it's really to do with me just threatening you to try and make you back down and so on, is an appalling admission of the misuse of play.
Yes, and I mean, on that as well, do you think that sort of a lot of war video games that are glamorizing war and death and destruction, and actually people go around shooting other people, bombing them in these video games and getting gratification out of it, do you think that desensitizes people in the real world to real war, where people are really getting killed and maimed and so on?
By and large, yes. I think expose people to violent behaviour of any sort. And if it's persistent, then it does desensitise you, because you have to desensitise yourself to switch off from it all.
Well, isn't that one of the methods or techniques that people suggest if you have a fear, for example, is that you immerse yourself in that fear? If you've got a fear of spiders, then swim in a pool full of spiders. I know that's a bit extreme, but that's the sort of the idea, isn't it? And it's like, well, if you're finding yourself immersed in war and bombs, even if it's a virtual reality or a video game, it's still getting in here, isn't it? I think.
And people somehow seem to think it's inevitable that you can't not have war.
Right.
Yeah, there are countries in the world that have never been to war.
Okay, well, I'm going to go out on a limb here. I agree with you there. There are countries, but there are some countries that are made to look like they're going to war. Iran, for example, in the last thousands of years, despite what people might feel or think they know, Iran has not invaded anybody. They've stayed within their own borders. And yet the perception of Iran is there's some maniac state that go around terrorizing people around the world. But actually the reality is that they didn't invade anybody. They've just been protecting themselves. Now, I'm not saying right or wrong for the Iranian politics or what it's like to live there, the so-called regime, but I've never visited Iran myself, but if you look at the facts, they haven't invaded anybody, and yet the people that say they are the bad people, in the last 10 years have how many countries has the US invaded? I don't know.
But
many.
If you look at the UK and think about all the countries that they subdued in different ways.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, certainly during the empire, but I mean, even now, taking a back foot, the UK is still supporting many wars around the world. It might be the US that's taking the lead, but certainly the UK has been either financially backing, or they'll back things like with supplying equipment or refueling for planes that are bombing and so on. So yeah, I
mean, if only people playing war games would actually stop war, one might think differently about them. But it doesn't seem to be a substitute.
Do you remember that book? I think it came out in the 60s. So it was kind of your time. I mean, I picked it up from the bookshelf. I think it was at home, called The War Game.
Oh, right.
And it's mainly pictures. But I think either in that book or an offshoot of that book, and in the early days of computing, they had a computer run a simulation on that game Tic-Tac-Toe. You know, Tic-Tac-Toe?
Yeah.
So noughts and crosses, essentially, as we know it. And you know how sort of you see war games being played in virtual environments to sort of, you know, I'm sure America, for example, has played a whole variety of war games in their computer systems on, if we attack Iran this way, what will happen? If we attack them this way, what will happen? Well, anyway, in this particular movie, the protagonist were trying to teach the computer the futility of war. And so they started playing with the computer noughts and crosses, tic-tac-toe. And then it was that process that taught the computer, in the movie, of course, that war was futile because nobody wins in the end in a nuclear war. Just as in tic-tac-toe, if you play it right, nobody wins. It's always a draw. So that was a very interesting, and it's quite old. You know, I mean, we're talking 40, 50 years ago that this was being talked about, and yet the human race certainly hasn't learned from that.
Yes,
the dangerous world.
There've been attempts to displace war into outer space, for example, to remove it from our day-to-day world. But it hasn't stopped other wars happening. It's just been a variation on a theme.
Yes, a variation on a theme, and it's been that the big, rich, bullying countries have been attacking the smaller countries. Noticeably, the countries without nuclear weapons have not been invaded. Countries with nuclear weapons haven't been invaded. Countries without nuclear weapons have. So,
and of course, that was the biggest fear, wasn't it? Certainly, when I was growing up, all the initiatives to ban the bomb and all the marches to Trafalgar Square to protest about nuclear weapons. Whereas now people talk about it in a day-to-day way. Well, we need more because we've got to defend ourselves. And we can't be the first people to give up nuclear weapons and so on. So it's part of day-to-day conversation. And that's what, in, say, 60 years, from being something quite rarefied and something you could demonstrate about and so on. I mean, you very rarely hear people protesting about nuclear weaponry now.
No. Well, I mean, you know, particularly with the new sort of environmental pushes in terms of, you know, using alternatives to coal and so on in terms of generating electricity, that nuclear power is now much more of a viable and acceptable option than it used to be when I was growing up, because the word nuclear, whether it was nuclear power, nuclear energy, nuclear bombs, it was all negative. But now nuclear energy is seen as an acceptable, viable, clean energy source. But what was interesting, you know, I'm particularly interested in sort of history of people and ancient civilizations, and some would say conspiracy theories. There was There was where was this theory? Oh, my camera keeps on moving. Oh, my mind has gone a blank here. Yeah.
Were you pursuing conspiracy theories?
No, I wasn't. I wasn't. No, there was something.
I find
there.
them a sort of an elaborate game that people play.
Conspiracy theories.
In the negative sense that
Right.
if you can cast enough doubt with a group of people about something, whether it's measles vaccine, whether it was COVID, it's often to do with disease.
Yeah.
But you only need to have a small group of people who are converted to believing that somehow there's an underlying motive for this happening, and it's to do with other people taking power from us. That you then get, that will grow.
No, absolutely. I mean, and it's famous. I believe it comes from the Mossad, in that it's very easy to make something look like a conspiracy theory. Is that if a group or a person is saying some stuff that you don't like, you just send out a disinformation campaign, which is directed at sort of diminishing what they say. You say some partial truths, but you make them look very, very silly. And it's not long before people would just start calling them a crank and so on. It's a well-used method by many security services. Actually, it's a method that's used certainly on social media a lot. As you say something enough times, you try to give different voices, even though they might be bots that are saying this, and people don't know what to believe. And in the end, if people don't know what to believe, they kind of dismiss it and they move on to something else. So, they say a week is a long day in politics. I think a day is a long time on the internet.
A day is a long time in education.
Yes, yeah. A day is not long enough when you're playing, though. Yeah. So
is there anything more we want to explore before we go about what's going on in London schools and all this empty space that's not being used?
Well, as I say, I mean, it's not in my backyard, it's not in yours. If I was living in London, I would certainly want to be doing something about it. And I think it is up to the communities in London to start speaking to their local authorities, their local education authorities. We need space. Adventure playgrounds have closed down, youth clubs have closed down. There's not enough spaces for young people to use. Speak to your local school, speak to the local education authority. How can we work with schools to open up some of these spaces and make them available for people? What's the point in having, a huge football pitch, which some schools have, a huge rugby pitch, whatever, that can't be used after hours? There must be some agreement that is able to be made for it to be, what's the word?
Yes, and when you think
marshalled,
about it, a lot of money was invested in education to build new schools, to build more modern schools.
Yeah.
The interesting thing that came up about that was that the new schools, which had big walls of glass and pupils could see out, of course became untenable during the heat wave.
Right.
And it was the old-fashioned schools with very high ceilings and windows at the top of the room so you couldn't look out of it, were the ones that survived.
Buildings.
Yeah. But they stayed cool and they didn't close down like some of the other schools.
I mean, you should see some of the private schools that we visit around the country. Their facilities are amazing. No, I'm serious here. I mean, you see some of the facilities and you think, you go to one school and they use their hall not only for playing games and football and outside activities because they haven't got a playground. They use it for eating. They use it for assemblies. They use it for everything. They got one space used for everything because they don't have the resources, the money, and yet you'll see, I would say without question, the 99% of the private schools that we visit, their facilities are amazing. They've got football pitches, they've got rugby pitches, they've got hockey, which they can do. Some have swimming pools. I mean, this is just the outside spaces. Yeah. Yes. Okay, so we're drawing to a close, I think, today's podcast. As we like to end all of our sessions, if you're feeling, I know we've talked quite a bit about war, we've talked about deprivation, we've talked about unfairness, we've talked about fake news and so on. So a little bit of a negative, playful podcast this week. So if we've contributed to your anxiety, we apologise for that. But we're going to end now with some playful ideas to help you reduce the anxiety, whether the anxiety has come from us or whether it's come from yourselves in your day-to-day life or from wherever. Sue, what have you got for our viewers this week?
Well, a very simple, playful idea that can help to resolve challenges that a child, an adult are experiencing. You get one piece of paper and fold it and fold it and fold it like a concertina. And then draw a head and a body and two arms and two legs.
Right.
And then cut all the way round it, just leaving one little bit joining. And you have a row of 2, 3, 5, 10 people.
All holding hands.
All holding hands. You can talk to them, you can play with them, you can make them individuals by drawing features and clothes on them. But it's a really playful, simple thing to do. So that's
Yes.
my contribution today.
Yeah, no, it is great. And I mean, I remember I was going to say as a child, I used to love doing that. But even as an adult, it's a good, fun activity. But I always remember, if you get it wrong, right, there's a certain way of cutting. And if you've cut it a bit wrong, it all falls apart. You think,
Yes.
which bit did I cut wrong? And they're not holding hands, or you've just got two people together. And so you've got to
You'd
get
end
it
up
right.
with just
You're gonna
one
know
figure in each hand, and nothing was joined
which
up.
bit you got to snip and which bit you haven't. Okay, so I'm going to relate my activity to something that we already talked about, and that's clouds. So I'd like to hold out the palm of your hand and pretend that there's a small cloud sitting in front of your palm. Then put a worry inside that cloud and silently say, "This cloud can hold one worry for a moment." Then blow it gently. Take 3 slow breaths and gently blow the cloud a little further away each time and watch it float. Imagine it drifting to the corner of the room, still there, but not inside of you. And
That's lovely,
you can
Andy.
finish by saying, "The worry is near me, but is not at all a part of me." Simple, playful, and gives your anxiety a little bit of distance.
Lovely.
Yeah. That's this week's podcast. If you've enjoyed it, please drop us a like, subscribe to the channel. Really helps the algorithm, and we appreciate that if you do that. This is me, Andy, saying don't forget to play.
And Me, Sue, saying goodbye for today. And again, don't forget to play.
Don't forget to play. Ciao, and see you next time. Bye-bye.